give them the chance to experiment themselves and tell you how AI is working or not working. Don't tell them. And when we see this happening in companies from the C-level down to the, say, first semester of someone's job, if they're a co-op or even a first-year employee, everyone speaks the same language. The CEO of a company can quickly find a fault in any LLM within 5 minutes, as can the first-year employee. This is a great opportunity for a new tech. Since when have we had the opportunity to have the same technology for everybody, and we're starting from the same base? So companies that realize this and enable this, flatten the learning curve for everybody, they're doing very well.
Hello, and welcome to the International Business Today podcast. I'm Professor Ravi Sarathy from the International Business and Strategy Group at the De Moore-McKim School of Business at Northeastern University. Our International Business Today podcast seeks to discuss and present topics of current relevance in global strategy and international business. My guest today is Professor Kwong Chan, an academic specialist in marketing at the De Moore-McKim School of Business, and he also serves as an executive director of our DMSB AI Strategic Hub at Northeastern University. He's originally from Australia, from Tasmania. He holds a PhD from Michigan State University, and prior to joining Northeastern, Professor Kwong was an associate director in the telecommunication and technology industry practice group at Nielsen, and a marketing professor at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Kwong has worked with a range of companies, including Samsung, Goodyear, Visa, Nike, Asus, Acer, and General Motors. His research spans innovation and analytics, and he's published in academic journals such as IEEE Transactions in Engineering Management, Journal of Product Innovation Management, and others. He's also the co-author of a book, Break the Wall: Why and How to Democratize Digital in Your Business. Kwong, welcome to IBT. It's a pleasure to have you with us and to learn from you about AI in business and issues central to real-world AI implementation.
It's a pleasure to be here, Ravi. Thank you.
So let's start off, Kwong, by asking a very obvious question. You're an expert in digital strategy and its implementation. So could you start by telling me and our audience about your experience with designing and implementing AI applications in business?
Sure, it's a very hot field. Right now, we're working with several groups, several organizations, from digital twin creation, agentic AI, analyzing multimodal input, especially audio input, to help people speak better, present better. We have virtual worlds we're creating where AI agents can talk to each other 1, 2, 3 times, maybe even over years. And we can put a human in that too. So there's a range of applications we're dealing with. One is helping people improve their existing approaches, but also building them from scratch.
Now, I've read that businesses have had mixed results in using AI in their businesses. Some applications, for example, using AI chatbots in customer service, seems to have produced quite satisfactory results for many users. But other projects have not yielded positive economic value added. What is your take on how effectively businesses are using AI currently and obtaining reasonable results from using AI?
I really think that the way companies implement new technology in general, whether it's 2025 or 5 years ago or 20 years ago, some of the lessons are the same. So how enthusiastic is a company about technology adoption versus how enthusiastic is a company about problem solving? So what we're seeing now are some companies being very tech positive and I want as much AI as possible. And often the first manifestation is a chatbot. The question is that the way we should do it throughout the entire organization? And the answer is no, because we don't want a very, very excited executive suite just spending money on tech and everybody racing to just meet the metrics. We know of people in companies who are told they must use AI on a daily basis. And I talk to these people and they say, I don't need AI to do my job. In fact, it makes it worse. But I will log in and use it just because I know they're tracking my use of AI. And that's a typical technology adoption-centric culture. We want the tech, but we haven't focused on the solution. So the companies that are really doing well, including the ones with great chatbots, they're using it to solve a problem, such as improve customer response time, getting documentation to customers in a more expedient manner. The ones that aren't working so well are saying, well, AI is supposed to work, so let's just try AI first and then see what happens, versus let's step by step make sure we're measuring any improvement, not just for the customers, but also our people that have to use the tech to serve the customers.
So then in your work with companies, are there specific practices that seem to improve or lead to greater success in using AI?
I think there's definitely a trend that's emerging with regard to successful use of AI. And it's having the courage as a leader to say, I don't know everything. I don't know if we should spend X million dollars on this particular service from this particular company. So let's go in with an open mind. Let's try this. And if it's not working, let's investigate why and maybe switch. So for example, try to train the people and put the technology in their hands. So one example could be, we could get everybody ChatGPT subscriptions or any LLM subscription to any company. Is that a good thing? Not really, unless we say to them, what particular part of your work, research or operations could be enhanced by using ChatGPT? And if they say nothing, well, take them at their word. But give them the chance to experiment themselves and tell you how AI is working or not working. Don't tell them. And when we see this happening in companies from the C-level down to the, say, first semester of someone's job, if they're a co-op or even a first-year employee, everyone speaks the same language. The CEO of a company can quickly find a fault in any LLM within 5 minutes, as can the first-year employee. This is a great opportunity for a new tech. Since when have we had the opportunity to have the same technology for everybody, and we're starting from the same base? So companies that realize this and enable this, flatten the learning curve for everybody, they're doing very well.
Yes, I've read that something like 2 billion people around the world have instant access to free versions of ChatGPT, Gemini, Anthropic's Claude, etc. So you're right. It's an amazing experiment in open access to a very advanced tool. Now, my question would be next then, is AI better for internal applications where companies have a lot of proprietary data that's not available outside the company? Or is it better to use AI primarily for external facing applications, such as the customer service chatbots that you just referenced? What do you think?
So I know, Ravi, you're a strategy guy. So let's start with the strategy part. And I think the default for most companies should be protect the data that you know is proprietary to yourself. I don't think most companies are equipped to buy 30,000 GPUs or hire the world's top algorithmic mathematicians and data scientists, right? They cost probably more than GPUs. Or fire up a nuclear power plant, right? But what most companies can do is use their proprietary data to build unique insights that their competitors don't have. So whether we're serving an internal audience, such as I'm an internal analytics AI consulting group, or serving our customers externally, we have to do it in a way that uses our existing proprietary data, but expands it. So if I'm serving customers with an AI tool, what I need to do is A/B test that with the AI tool and the non-AI tool, just as I'm probably using already, the non-AI version, collect the data, use that to then build an improved AI tool that's in-house or an improved human tool that's also in-house. Either way, it's still proprietary. It's not great to give that insight up to, say, a cloud provider that's collecting all the analytics. You need that. You want that. So as much as possible, internal or external, use your data, grow it, measure it, and repeat.
That's your competitive advantage in strategic jargon.
Some things don't change, right? Some things don't change.
Yeah. So are you suggesting that off-the-shelf LLMs should be licensed and then tweaked internally to work with this proprietary data that companies have, whether for external or purely internal applications?
Many companies see an urgency in action, and the easiest solution to implement quickly is to pay for a subscription, a business level, corporate level subscription to one of the providers, and say, can we pay you X number of dollars per month? Then you give us an enclaved, secure environment. Nobody I know truly knows what an enclaved, secure environment means when you're using an LLM from an external provider. So that's one caveat there. The other is, if you're going to do that, do it at small scale and get two providers. You need to be able to compare how they work. So for anybody out there that's using LLMs, the best thing you can do is use two. Don't just use one, right? And then you start to learn very quickly about how LLMs work, even if you're not a computer scientist or someone in the field. Companies should do the same thing. So try multiple providers or try building it yourself at small scale. The very act of allowing your team to start to build an internal solution, which could be a computer with a GPU and a big memory stack, that will tell you what you need from an external provider versus what they tell you what you need, which is, as we know, often a different dollar amount. So I would say try to give yourself always two options that you can compare.
Now, a critical element, I would say, of this kind of experimentation is the actual proprietary database. And I know that AI's great advantage over pure analytics is the ability to work with unstructured multimodal data, which means text and graphics, images, speeches, video, and quantitative and qualitative data. So to do this, how much of a challenge is it for a company to put together the data first before they start trying to say, okay, now let's try it on this LLM we have licensed to see if it can provide us with some edge instead of just purely using human in processing?
That's a great question. I think it's always been the most important step first to put the data structures together. Back when information systems was invented as a field, when we had data science, everybody wanted the great predictive models, but we found we didn't actually have the data to make these predictive models. We had to go back and get an Excel spreadsheet from 20 years ago. Sometimes paper documents had to be digitized, and then we could put the predictive models in play. So with regard to multimodal data points, visual, video, audio, network data, that needs to be put into a format that is amenable to analysis, whether or not it's AI or not. So you can use your classic machine learning models, your regressions and your support vector machines, and those need very clean data. You don't need to clean the data to run an LLM, but you should, because garbage in, garbage out. None of us think LLMs are perfect, and the less perfect your data are, the less perfect the LLM is going to be. I'm not saying it's bad for an LLM to be imperfect, but you'd like to have confidence that it's not you, it's them, to paraphrase a great meme. So really, companies need to understand what they want out of their data before deciding to use AI. And that means getting your data in good shape first.
So you need some kind of data specialists to work with the various parts of the company that will be providing that unstructured data.
For sure.
Okay.
For sure. And we look at people's qualifications or resumes. It's not encouraging to see that someone's only learned how to deal with different kinds of data using LLMs only. Because you can throw anything into an LLM, it's going to give you an answer.
Yes.
But if someone spent years in multimedia handling the raw data, the raw format from video and audio, you want them to start there, because then they can easily pick up LLMs, not the other way around.
Now, you suggested earlier that very few companies would have the capability to develop an LLM from scratch, but it would be easier to license an LLM and then add to it in using internal programmers. Is there ever a case for saying, let's just go out and use open source LLM, for example, Mistral from France, and let's just source that? Or I believe Grok also allows you to get an open source license, do that, and then essentially develop a completely proprietary AI LLM. Is that something that you've seen in your work with companies? And would you advise that, or would you say, no, this is only for a very select group of companies?
I would strongly encourage any organization, any company, any group to take an open source model, such as Mistral, such as Llama, any of them, and run it. So what does that mean? Most of us these days, with these powerful laptops that we can buy off the shelf, for not that much money can run these locally. They won't be fast, but you can run it locally. Your data's local, the computation's local. It's your own electricity, right? For better or for worse. The more a company can do that, the more it's going to have options strategically down the road. So do you spend $100,000 on a license for a cloud provider, or do you spend $50,000 on making a hardware stack that's pretty high powered and maybe funding some people to learn how to use it? I would say take the second approach always. And then if you think you still need the first approach, do so, because you're upskilling your team. They're becoming more confident in what AI is. They're not just using an off-the-shelf product here. They're learning how to cook, right? They're learning how to make their own recipe. They're not taking the fast food option off the shelf. Doesn't mean you don't like fast food, but you want to know what you're eating before you go into that restaurant.
Now, another buzzword that is very current is agentic AI. It's very much in the news. So what exactly is agentic AI, and what is its value for corporations? And should getting expertise, experience in using agentic AI be a priority now for companies?
I think companies need to understand the power of agentic AI. So what would it mean if we allowed a personal agent or a professional agent to make decisions and act on those decisions? So right now we can make a virtual clone of anybody and it can talk to it. You can talk to itself even or talk to a human, but we don't usually let it make decisions and then act upon them, such as, hey, here's my credit card, book my holiday for us. So with agentic AI, with corporations and with individuals, it means that if we allow them to make decisions, we essentially plug them in to the real world, we can actually automate a lot of tasks that we otherwise can't. So I can have my holiday booked by an agentic AI. Do I want that? I don't mind it proposing the holiday, but I don't want to give it my credit card. So for companies as well, do you want it to decide where the truck should drive to deliver the goods and then drive the truck? Or just suggest the route here? So this is what we're faced with agentic AI. Once we allow automation, a humanoid robot, right, with an AI agent to act autonomously, do your washing, right, stock the shelves, that's highly promising in terms of cost cutting and for labor costs and advancing technology. But what we need to know is what are the likely downsides? What's going to happen? Because this always happens. Companies rush in, they try it out. Things go wrong sometimes, and then we learn from the next wave. So for any companies that are going to do this, I would say, by all means, be first, but A/B test it, like I said, in terms of human versus AI. Don't just rush it and go all in.
I'm thinking of a parallel in the blockchain world where smart contracts are very much part of Ethereum applications. And smart contracts are automatically executed when certain conditions are met. And the difficulty is how reliable is the data that triggers the execution of a smart contract without any human intervention? And so blockchain world has been struggling and coming up with various solutions, which often involve leaving the blockchain, which then brings in a security issue. So would you see something similar? Because we know that AI gives us wrong answers, gives us hallucinations, to use a term in the industry. So how can AI, or how can companies guard against these kinds of blind reliance on AI results, especially if they move to an agentic AI application, which would be driven by some form of data that's being fed into the AI, or asking AI to go out and scour the internet and look for the latest feed from some news ticker or stock ticker, et cetera, or foreign exchange ticker, right? So how would you guard against that?
I mean, generative AI has really shifted our expectation of what we should achieve with a model. Previously, it was largely deterministic. I have a trading algorithm. I expect it to act under certain conditions. And if it doesn't, hopefully I know why it didn't act or did act in that sense. Generative AI is an acceptance of uncertainty. And sometimes that looks like a hallucination. And in some ways, you could make an analogy between, say, Newtonian mechanics and relativity, and then quantum mechanics, where you just had to accept, uncertainty is part of it. And if the collapse of the wave function happens to look deterministic, great. But it's not always easy to predict. LLMs are somewhat similar. It's all hallucinations, all of it. It's just that some we don't like. And we really should be seeing it as we're lucky to get an outcome we like, because it's the same process that's yielding the undesirable outcomes, which we call hallucinations. So same with, I think, the physical world. Sometimes we like the outcome, sometimes we don't. But it's the same process that's leading to a solar flare or a supernova. We have to see it that way. So if companies look at generative AI as, by definition, probabilistic and all one big hallucination, it tells us better how to deploy these. So a chatbot, customer service chatbot, if you then think, you know what, every response from this chatbot is a hallucination, should I roll it out? It's a different conversation for operations than to say, it's perfect 99% of the time, 1% it hallucinates. That's kind of the wrong way to look at it. It's hallucinating 100% of the time, which is like it 99% of the time. It's the same thing, but it really makes a difference to how you view this technology.
So in a sense, you can't avoid hallucinations as long as you understand the probabilistic nature of generative AI. It's a matter of deciding, like any type A, type B error, right? A matter of deciding how much to accept, false positives and the opposite.
Right. And depending on your application and your field, if you're in the creative discipline, maybe you'll welcome more of the false positives than if you're in a more deterministic field where you don't want too many of those. And we don't talk about that enough, I think, especially in the business and strategy sphere. We just see it as a machine learning AI tool. It's a probabilistic prediction.
Now, a related question, and that has to do with algorithms and algorithmic bias, and how algorithmic bias may lead firms astray in terms of not conforming to their ethical principles and values. So what are your thoughts on this whole issue of bias built into an LLM, particularly one that you're licensing or using off the shelf? And what are some best practices in this regard?
I think we are at the current state where we often trust the providers of LLMs. When I say providers, I mean those people that train them on the massive data centers, right? The training data centers here. And most of it just use the inference, right? The outcome of it. We are trusting them to use the right data to train. And then in the fine tuning of it or the reinforcement learning of the outputs to provide us with a product or a service that is minimally dangerous, minimally biased. But any model that is trained on real world data is going to express preferences of bias, if that's the right way to put it. I would be disappointed if Gen AI wasn't biased. When you meet someone off the street, if they're not biased toward anything, it's the most boring person you've ever met. And I think we should want bias in Gen AI to the extent that we can understand it. So one way to do it yourself is you try to get a less locked down large language model, like an open source one, and make it act in very biased ways, deliberately, differently, right? Against a football team for a football team, for a soccer team against a soccer team. And then you start to learn very quickly how these models are trained. And you start to embrace the bias by saying, it's not that it's biased, it's just it's been fed certain data sets and it's giving me the results of those data sets. So we're back to what we started with any model, whether it's statistical or non-statistical. If you gave it a certain kind of data, it better reflect that data or it's not a good model. And LLMs are reflecting the data that they've been provided, which is biased because I don't think anybody would argue the internet is unbiased. And so it's a good thing in the sense, it'd be weird if LLMs didn't show any bias at all. We just have to understand as companies and as people what kind of bias it is.
And the same would apply to a company using purely internal databases. There would be possibly some bias in its own internal databases. And it just needs to be aware that that's the nature of an LLM. Whatever the data you give, the inherent bias in the data is reflected in the AI's output.
As a company, your data, the bias in your data is your advantage.
Yes.
Because no one else knows how biased your data are or if it's biased at all. So when I say biased, it could be maybe you just happen to have a lot of high-value customers in your data set. That's bias. And you can make it work for you. You build your in-house model that knows how to serve those customers best. And you keep that locked down. You keep it within your strategic tool set or toolkit. And the more you use it, the better it gets. And it's harder to copy. So absolutely, we need to recognize the bias, quantify it, and leverage it.
Now, AI is changing the world of employment. I've read companies such as Amazon and Salesforce publicly announcing their intent to reduce new hires, the rate of new hires, And the reasoning is that we can raise the productivity of our existing employees with AI complementing their work. And so you and I are at business schools, and we train students, undergraduate and graduate students, to go out into the world of business. So we thus, I believe, have a new obligation, right? An objective to teach our graduates to use AI effectively. And you're the executive director of the AI Strategic Hub at our business school, at the Demora McKim Business School. And you're the executive director of DASH, the DMSB AI Strategic Hub. So could you talk a little bit about how you are helping the business school, DMSB, incorporate AI into the broad educational mission?
At the Demora McKim School of Business AI Strategic Hub, we're an accelerator. Anybody in the business school that wants to learn more about AI and make it real, make it happen. It could be in the classroom, it could be research, it could be companies, it could be for social good. Our job is to accelerate that effort. And we have our own research projects that are more specific to AI deployment in education. And it's obviously a strong focus for us at the Demora McKim School of Business. But when I say accelerate, if the barrier seems to be, I don't know why this is happening in a certain model that I'm using, our job is to help them find the answer to that. And when we do that, it could be compute. So we've grown our compute 10 times in the last 10x, in the last 10 months, trying to get the answers for our teaching faculty and research faculty, because they couldn't get the answer without the compute. That same compute, our students are using also to build agentic AI, to work out if they can launch startups at scale without having to spend a lot of money with third-party providers here. So our own view on education, such as it is we need to use AI to help humans, right, to augment humanity. So if you think about who are the highest performers in the world, is it the hardest worker? Is it the smartest person? No, it's the person that has failed the most and adapted and tried again. It's not the smartest, not the hardest worker. So we need to use AI to help us get the most feedback loops possible. Try and try and try again. AI is unique. Think about a chatbot. You can talk to it and say, should I do X? No, it failed. Should I try X1? Failed. X2 failed. Rapidly close those learning loops. If we look at it that way, we use AI to help us get better, faster. And with regard to job loss, whether it's the large companies forecasting hundreds of thousands of jobs being lost, we need to use it in a way that helps the worker close these feedback loops more quickly and get better at it. I think most of us would want to be in charge of robots in a warehouse than to be the robot running around the warehouse. And how do we do that? We have to help these workers upskill, these people like us upskill, by closing these feedback loops. LLMs are so much fun to play with because every time you talk to it, it's closing a feedback loop for itself and for us, for better or for worse. So we are learning rapidly. The AI LLM is learning rapidly too. So we need to get out of a world where we're just helping the LLM get faster and better by closing their loops, and make it help us close our loops faster and better. So at the Demora McKim School of Business AI Strategic Hub, we have these different methods. We have a technology called PresBot, presentation bot, where our students can present verbally, and our AI feedback loop gives them written feedback, and they can adjust and build their own clone of themselves if they wish to see how it would sound. I want to speak slower, which I always do. I want to be more confident, which I always do, but I don't want to do it in public. So I will use AI to get better at presenting for my job interview, for my pitch startup. We have a similar technology for writing essays and short answer questions, where faculty and students can use it to improve their writing, their reflection. We create agentic AI graders virtually based upon students or a faculty's rubric, and we provide feedback to the student or faculty. That's EssayBot. So we're trying to close these loops and accelerate people's learning in a safe environment and make AI work for us.
Good. Now, you earlier mentioned adding to the compute, and I know that Dash has a high-performance computing resource for machine learning, deep learning, data-intensive applications. So how did that come about, that Dash decided that we have to invest in a specialized computing resource that is going to supplement what Dash does at the level of training and helping with applications? Why was that decision made that we need to control some compute in addition to just teaching how to use AI?
This really gets back to your earlier question on should companies just use the cloud or do it themselves,
Right.
And so I did allude to the fact that there's a lot of benefit to doing it yourself. You get to learn about hardware and software, and your people get to upskill and get very satisfied in the process of upskilling. But you also know if you're pushing the boundaries because you run into regulatory problems. So what happens if you're in your company and all of a sudden you think, should my customer data really be sent across the internet to a cloud provider? Should my lectures as a professor be uploaded to a cloud provider? So we found that we could answer many questions by doing it locally. So if I was lucky enough to have your strategy slides, Ravi, I wouldn't want to put it into a cloud provider without your permission. For obvious reasons, we don't know where it's going to go. But if it's sent to a local box, then we know it's going nowhere. So we might lose some speed potentially in analyzing the slides if that's what we're doing in terms of taking out all the great insights. But what we gain is privacy, we gain data protection, and we gain a very strong ability to change the output. So I could say to the model on the local compute box we have, just pull out the industry environment insights from Ravi's presentations and ignore the strategy, capability, resource part, right? And then we can trace which lectures students were relying upon when they answered the question. Some answered based upon the industry environment, some used the resources and capabilities too much, and we can tweak that quite easily locally. So we built this local compute box for data protection and also to upskill our faculty and our students who literally built it from scratch.
Now, I'm sure faculty are also using it for research purposes, AI for research, in addition to AI for improving teaching. And one of the projects I read about was an AI-based evaluation of digital video advertising effectiveness. Could you talk a little bit about the research side of things, how the STASH Center is helping faculty use AI and do AI-oriented research?
Absolutely. Our box, we call it the box in-house. It's kind of an affectionate term. And this is really relevant for any organization out there. I think we have unbelievable amounts of compute at our fingertips. We can log into any of these providers, AWS or Azure, right, and spin up dozens and dozens of CPUs and GPUs here. And at Northeastern, we have our Explorer cluster. We have hundreds of GPUs and CPUs, that massive computing power. But you and I don't always need to spin up 100 GPUs. Not only that, it takes time to spin them up. You got to book the time, you got to make the code custom, etc. So our Dash box started off with one GPU, which was a fraction of what our big cluster can do. What our research faculty found was if they've got to spare 2 hours, 4 hours to run a model, it was easier for them just to log into the box, run the model, get the result, and try it again the next day. And that rapidly closed the loop. Our faculty learned very quickly which of their hypotheses and the models were working and not working versus saving up all these hypotheses for one big run to do at the end of the month. It's almost like a YOLO run for those people out there that do training. And we managed to help faculty rapidly iterate their ideas. And as researchers, as cutting edge people in a profession, you want to know the answers to your question as soon as possible before you get bored or you move on to the next question. So our box has allowed faculty to run their models much more quickly, and not only that, try a different model much more rapidly. And we now have, as I said, 10x our GPU compute with a lot more RAM. So for all you people out there, if you're going to buy a laptop, buy a computer, buy lots of RAM. That's all you need. That's the most important consideration these days.
Another concern, AI is evolving incredibly fast. Just in the last year, we've got, version 5 of ChatGPT, and you've got Sonnet 3.5 from Claude, etc. So if a company jumps in and says, okay, I'm going to start developing AI applications, is there a risk that they're stuck with an older generation? Or should they say it's very easy to keep abreast and constantly update and just stay with the latest AI models and the latest generation that's available? In other words, how do you maintain flexibility in the organization when it comes to using AI and keeping up with model iteration and model improvements?
I think a great approach for organizations is to separate the data that's being used, your own data, and the model that's being applied to that data. So one big advantage of doing it in-house, which we've been talking about, is if you do it in-house with open source models, Llama, Mistral, other models, then you can swap out the model, use it on the same data set, and see if it was any better. Right. These days, I would say for most companies, there's not a need to use the latest cloud provided model, whether it's GPT-5 or GPT-15. You can use open source models on your data set and switch out the model and see what happens. Similarly, keep the same model, switch out the data. How much data can I get away with not using and still get great results?
Mm-hmm.
So when you separate the data from the model, you're much more able to work out if the latest model is better because it was trained on more data from the provider, or it's a better algorithm in that sense. So what if I downloaded GPT-21 and it was great? The question was it a better algorithm or just it had a different data set? And by separating the open source model you use locally and your in-house data, you'll get a good insight as to whether they just used more compute and more data to make it look better versus actually improved.
Mm-hmm. Very insightful. Now, one of our big responsibilities is converting all of this knowledge and presenting it to students and faculty and businesses, to managers, so that they can become adept at using it. And I know you have personally been part of a group that has developed a whole set of training modules, a 4-course sequence, if I understand correctly. Tell me some details about the online graduate certificate in AI applications and your course, Strategic AI in Business, both of which we at Demora McKim offer to faculty, students, and managers who want to learn more about using AI well.
We are really proud of this AI certification. It's a very Northeastern way to share our knowledge with the world, and knowledge that is usable, relevant, and wants you to learn more. So our 4-course sequence is designed to give people knowledge that is immediately useful in their jobs. So understand which AI models are out there and are useful, right, without having to go too deep into the algorithms. My own course talks about how companies can use it to develop more effective strategy. And for most people that are working or are about to work, it'll give them an idea as to whether or not it's a good idea for a company to use AI in which parts of the value chain, or whether or not it's just the shiny new sticker on the car. And once people take these courses, they will make a great decision as to whether or not to keep putting their own resources into learning more about AI or not. And if they like this certificate sequence, they can actually use these courses toward taking a full master's from Northeastern University, whether it's an MBA or a certificate in AI.
So it's very clear from this conversation and from your comments and insights that managers at all levels in a company, as well as students seeking to enter the workforce and faculty who do research and who teach these students, all of these groups need to stay relevant and productive in this fast-paced AI world. So what is your advice for companies, for managers, for business faculty, and for undergraduate and graduate students? What is the advice you would give in terms of how should I plan to become more knowledgeable in this AI world?
So I can think of 2 scenarios that often pop up when we talk to companies and people about this AI world. We can't avoid it, right? We're surrounded by AI. And for the people in leadership positions, you got to be as transparent as possible. You really need to be transparent in that we don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. Even the people who are in these multi-billion or trillion-dollar companies are making it very clear they don't know where we're going, but we're going in that direction anyway. So as a leader in a company, whether you're a manager, director, or CEO, CFO, CTO, make it clear to your team, we need to be involved in this, but not in a just spend as much money and see what happens. We're going to train everybody to understand this, all of us, right? That transparency we find to be very powerful in companies to use AI successfully. If you're just starting out and you're not sure that your company has a clear vision, don't wait for your company. Start upskilling. Like, pay that $20 to the local provider for your LLM that you like to use. Play with it. Play with 2, not just 1. Upskill yourself. Why? Because you will know as much as anybody else in your company, the average person for sure, and probably more, about how this Gen AI world works. And when the opportunity arises, you'll be very well prepared to take it, whether it's switching jobs, whether it's getting promoted. And what we're finding in many companies is they want an internal champion to be the entrepreneur. So let's build a local compute, or let's try a new customer service bot. Who wants to try these out? You want to be ready to be in that position, to be that internal entrepreneur, the entrepreneur. in the company and be given the responsibility. So the best case is be transparent if you're a leader, train as many people as you can while making it clear nobody knows everything. And if you're just the person on the pole that's waiting to get your, turn, be prepared, right? Don't wait, just have fun using it.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Professor Kwong, this has been a pleasure having you as a guest on International Business Today. Thank you for your time and really interesting and deep insights into real-world AI implementation and how we in business schools should integrate AI into the curriculum and help our students and help managers that we train, as well as our own faculty. All of these groups use AI effectively. This is Professor Ravi Sarathy, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode of International Business Today. My guest has been Professor Kwong Chan, and I hope you found some of his advice useful. And please go out and start using AI and continue using AI. And if you've enjoyed this episode, subscribe to International Business Today and come back again for another future episode of IBT. Thank you very much.